And I just recorded a video on Snowflake Cortex code where I was role playing as a banker who was trying to find out which one of my customers were most likely to default. And while I was doing that, I was thinking, well, I think yesterday or the day before, Databricks announced the general availability of Genie code. And it would be interesting to see what Snowflake Cortex code could do with that use case, and then what Databricks Genie code could do with that. So I've got them up here side by side, and I have not done this yet. We're just going to kind of raw dog it and see what happens, and we'll go from there. But the first thing I noticed as I was trying to size this is as far as I can kind of drag things on Snowflake, and on Databricks I'm able to go like all the way, which doesn't really matter, but for me, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But what we're going to do, first things first, is in the Cortex code video, I created a table with some synthetic loan data, 10,000 rows to be specific. So I'm just going to start right out of the gate with the same thing here in Databricks, where I say, hey, I need you to create this table, and go ahead and do that for me. It's asking if I have a certain schema that I would prefer to do this in, and I'm just going to say no, use defaults, because I don't really want to think about where I want to put it right now, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to blow it away anyway. So we'll have it create that, and we'll give that a second to spin. Okay, so it asks, do you want to skip or allow? I'm going to allow. And I think one of the interesting things here is right out of the gate, you can notice that Snowflake defaults to SQL. It's a SQL first platform. It really enjoys that. And as many people know, Databricks is more Python friendly. It definitely leans that way. You can write SQL. But now it's giving me a warning saying that, using overwrite is kind of dangerous. But again, it's okay. I know I don't have that table. I'm not too worried about it. So we're just going to run it and create it. So we'll create this synthetic data, and then we'll go from there. We can expand this and see what it's doing if we are interested. Okay, so the table has been created with 10,000 rows of data. This is great. You can now do whatever you want with it. Let me know. One thing that's interesting, if I scroll back up and collapse this, Snowflake out of the box actually kind of gave me this little, metric table and said, hey, I finished inserting all that data for you. Here's the risk factors, and here's some default rates for them. I can do that here. It says, you can ask me that, but it doesn't just do it naturally, which is just an interesting call out. So then the next thing I did was, in Snowflake, I said, great, I've got that table now. Now help me identify customers who are most at risk of defaulting on a loan. So I'm going to do the same thing with Databricks over here. I'm going to say, you use that table you just created and help me identify customers who are most at risk of defaulting on a loan. And we will see what ends up coming up with here. So I will allow it to run this query. And we can kind of compare even the thought process here, where in Snowflake, it does all the select, and then it's actually calculating this risk score over here, where it's using things like credit score. If it's less than 500, then it gives you 40 points, which are all these things it talks about right here. So it says, hey, here's kind of these factors in this giant case statement, and here's the points that's associated with it. And we can see that Databricks isn't doing that. So Databricks is just running a query and then has a where clause that says if your credit score is lower than 620, or you've got this 45% debt to income ratio, or you've defaulted prior, you're a risky customer. Which, okay, it's not wrong. It's a good way to kind of maybe tell if someone's at risk or not. But Snowflake actually went that extra mile and created this calculated column that kind of assigns scores arbitrarily, right? I could tweak it if I wanted. Maybe I don't want credit score 500. Maybe I want credit score, 400 or 600. but it kind of gave me more of a feeling that it was trying to help score it and give me the highest risk customers, just not arbitrarily based on a couple columns. So that is interesting. The other thing that I like about Snowflake that I'm not seeing here is Snowflake kind of, it prompts you back. So it's saying, okay, I've done all these, things for you. Here's something else you could do. Do you want me to build a predictive model to score all the customers, and compare them against your manual risk scoring? Do you want to analyze approval rates? Do you want to identify which combinations of these things are the highest default risk? So it actually kind of says, here's how we can kind of keep going with this. Here's some next steps. That's really nice if I'm someone who's exploring this data. I'm an analyst. I'm a business user who doesn't really know what I want to do. I'm just kind of hopping from one thing to the next. So I do appreciate that. I do think it's a miss to not have created a risk score here. It's just an interesting way to go about it. It did answer my question, so it's not wrong. It showed me 20 customers who are at risk of defaulting, but no real way other than that to kind of sort them or bucket them, right? So for this, in a 6-minute kind of go of comparing the two, I'm really liking the way that Snowflake does things from like a user experience perspective compared to where Databricks is. Now, again, I haven't dug into like pipeline building, real machine learning type workflows or anything like that. So not discounting Databricks, just from the get-go right here, I like what Snowflake did with this particular use case.